The Art of Communicating by Thich Nhat Hanh. Do I understand enough? If you want to make someone happy, you should ask yourself the question, do I understand him enough? Do I understand her enough? Many people are reluctant to talk because they fear that they say will be misunderstood. There are people who suffer so much. They're not capable of telling us about the suffering inside. And we have the impression that nothing is wrong until it's too late. Waiting has serious consequences. People may isolate themselves. They may suddenly end a friendship or a relationship. And they may even commit suicide. Something had been bothering that person for a long time, but he or she pretended everything was okay. Maybe fear or pride gets in the way. Listening and looking with mindfulness and concentration, we may discover that there's a block of suffering in that person. We see that she has suffered so much and doesn't know how to handle the suffering inside. So she continues to suffer and make other people suffer too. Once you have seen that, suddenly your anger is no longer there. Compassion arises. You have the insight that she is suffering and needs help, not punishment. If you need to, you can ask for help. You can say, "Dear one, I want to understand you more. I want to understand your difficulties and your suffering. I want to listen to you because I want to love you." When we take the time to look more deeply, we may see the first time the big clock of suffering in that person. Some might pretend not to suffer, but that's not true. When you're able to listen compassionately, other people have a chance to tell you about their difficulties. In a relationship, you may want to check whether you have understood the other person. If it is a relationship that is harmonious, in which communication is good, then happiness is there. If communication and harmony exist, it means mutual understanding is there. Don't wait until the other person has left or is full of anger to ask the important question. Do you think I understand you enough? The other person will tell you if you haven't understood enough. He will know if you are able to listen with compassion. You may say, "Please tell me, please help me, because I know very well that if I don't understand you, it will make a lot of mistakes." That is the language of love. The question, do you think I understand you enough, is not just a romantic relationship, but for friends, family members, and anyone you care about. If it can even help in a work setting. If you live with a family member, a romantic partner, or a friend, you may think that because you see this person every day, you know a lot about him or her. But that's not correct. You know only a little bit about that person. You may have lived with someone for 10, or 20 years, but you may not have looked deeply into that person to understand him or her. You may have done the same with yourself. You have lived with yourself for your whole life. We think that we already understand who we are, but unless we have listened deeply to ourselves, with compassion and curiosity, and without judgment, we may not know ourselves very well at all. If you wait until a family member pass away, it will be too late to ask them to share more about themselves. It's nice when a child of any age sits with a parent and asks about their experiences, sufferings, and sources of happiness. Just sit and listen. With mindful breathing and listening to ourselves, Our capacity for listening and looking expands deeply. We may find opportunity for much greater communication and connection with our parents and our loved ones. When you see that the other person has suffering inside, compassion is born in your heart. You may want to do something to help the person suffer less. Your compassionate listening and loving speech will already do a lot of change in the situation. You can sit with the person and together get insight into what other concrete action, if any, are necessary to help the situation. Compassionate listening isn't the only thing we can do when someone is suffering, but it's almost always the first step. The Art of Communicating by Thich Nhat Hanh.